Bobby Heenan, I know you've wrestled outdoors on many occasions. That's something that you have to consider as this match goes on.
That was mostly at family picnics.
You know, in all the years I've been doing the classic pay-per-view review, I've never touched a WCW Road Wild / Hog Wild event before. And since we are in the month of August, I figured it was finally time to dive into the deep lore of the show. And since this is kind of my style here on this channel, it makes sense to begin at the end and start with the final Road Wild event in WCW's history, Road Wild 1999, from Saturday, August 14th at Sturgis, South Dakota. This show was nominated by Didymus, Necobra, Andrew Miller, Alan Skinner, and Liam Parsons over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. I do want to address a little coincidence here because this is the first video I've published since the passing of Hulk Hogan, and I'm sure people are wondering if there's a connection between that and this, and there isn't. I've wanted to review an August pay-per-view that wasn't SummerSlam for a long time. I've planned covering Road Wild months and months in advance when I was scheduling the rest of the year for content. And frankly, Hulk Hogan is in all of the Road Wilds, and there's really no getting around him for that. And if you followed this series long enough, you know that I rarely, if ever, go into hindsight mode when talking about controversial or problematic wrestlers, so that is not what I intend to do here. I'm just going to, give it to you straight and give you my thoughts on Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash and the rest of this wild and zany cast of characters in WCW in '99, because wow, it's crazy to look back at this time period and just kind of pick up where I left off at Bash the Beach and just think, man, that show was really off the rails. How are they going to turn up the nose from this? And this is what they tried to do to correct all of it. Let's try and bring you up to speed from what happened at Bash at the Beach. So you had, Macho Man Randy Savage winning the championship. The next night, he drops it to a returning Hulk Hogan. We've not seen him since he got taken out with a knee injury at Spring Stampede. Hogan becomes the new world champion. Also, Ric Flair is no longer the power mad president of WCW. Shortly after Bash at the Beach, he lost a match to Sting on Nitro in a match where the presidency was on the line. Sting gave up the role, though. Immediately after winning it, he gave it back to the company, and then WCW formed a championship committee headed by Dusty Rhodes. And it feels like Nitro at this point is just half, hype video / long-form music videos just to advertise the brand of WCW, and the rest of it's live concerts featuring, Megadeth and Chad Brock and Master P, and Kiss shows up a little bit after this. And Thunder is even worse because that show at this point is nothing but Nitro recaps. You get one, maybe two matches that are taped just for Thunder there, and if you're lucky, you'll find one actual kind of nugget that advances a storyline along. But for the most part, they're showing you whole ass segments from Nitro the Monday before. And there's also a lot of continuity errors because of the taping schedule. They're taping all these Thunders in advance, but they're doing Nitro live every week. So, for instance, Fit Finlay, who's in a program where Jimmy Hart and the First Family have taken his Hardcore Championship trophy that he won from the Junkyard Invitational. He's supposed to fight them to get the trophy back, but a couple weeks before that event, he gets this gruesome injury in a live event where a table shard goes through his leg, and it's a miracle he's even able to walk again. So it's amazing he's able to in the future resume his wrestling career essentially after the damage he sustained. So that storyline is out, but Finlay shows up miraculously healed on Thunder, the week after it, because he's accompanying Steven Regal to the ring that week. Things like that, for instance. Also, another match that was supposed to be happening at Road Wild that is mysteriously just scrapped, Medusa versus Miss Madness 99, aka Mona, aka Molly Holly, aka Mighty Molly. It's too bad because they were really spending a lot of time on Nitro building those two ladies, especially Miss Madness, up as this singles competitor. She was almost on every show for a few weeks after Bash the Beach in singles action after Macho Man had fired her and Medusa. And so, it's kind of disappointing she didn't get that match on pay-per-view. But anyway, let's go to the show. I love this nice daytime setting at the ring is surrounded by the fans. They're all drunk and presumably full of crank, revving up their fat hogs. It's so windy, the pyro smoke immediately blows into the crowd. Did I mention that according to the weather records, it was a balmy 95 degrees in Sturgis when the show kicked off? The show earned about 235,000 pay-per-view buys. It's up big from 175,000 the month before Bash at the Beach. Hogan is in the main event, so maybe it is the Hogan factor. About 5,500 folks are in the crowd in Sturgis. Look at these cool guys in Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby Heenan on commentary. And by the way, there is a vuvuzela or some similar horn blowing in the background. You could hear it from here on and just the whole rest of the show. That guy is just blowing his horn all night, and I cannot believe that there wasn't a gang of bikers somewhere just beating the fuck out of him after 5 minutes.
By Vampiro, although Vampiro can go up top as well.
Certainly can be a part of the WCW.
Bobby Heenan is fired up, and well, he should be. Still to come.
By the way, Heenan is definitely asleep at the wheel at this point doing commentary on Nitro, but he's actually in a really great form tonight. I love the hyperbole that these commentators get into in the opening moments because, they're talking about the main event. It's career versus career, Hogan versus Nash, and Mike Tenay very earnestly says that the impact from this matchup is going to be felt across wrestling for years to come. Like, sure it will. We'll be surprised if it's felt for weeks to come. Heenan says he saw Dennis Rodman enter in a limousine that was 63 blocks long. Boy, I'd hate to merge with that thing. Your opening trios match sees the early version of the Filthy Animals, Eddie Guerrero, Kidman, and Rey Mysterio Jr. taking on the Deadpool. That's Vampiro and my current bosses in the Insane Clown Posse. Eddie Guerrero still on his big comeback run after his car accident from earlier in the year, but now former bitter rivals, he and Rey are now allies. Meanwhile, Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope have invaded WCW. The last time we saw them in wrestling was with the WWF, but now they've shown up to support Vampiro, and now we see Raven hanging around with all of them as well, kind of this silent force at ringside, and together they are known as the Deadpool. Don't get used to seeing Raven here for much longer though, because he is going to be out of the company and back to ECW in short order. Jay and Shaggy immediately get dumped outside. Vamp takes a lot of offense early on. Damn, does anyone else want a hamburger or a hand-dipped corn dog right now? Anyway, Eddie with a back elbow, Vampiro with a funny bump off of it. I love how Tenay refers to ICP as clown-faced shock rockers. Violent J with a body slam to Eddie on the outside. Look at the bounce on that floor. By the way, seeing the elevated stage like on top of the concrete just kind of irks me. It worries me, honestly, because it seems like an easy way for wrestlers to get hurt if they're not careful. I think about, Rick Rude, for example, that sort of thing. ICP gets some more time in the ring. Jay with the fists, Shaggy with the suplex. Heenan's wishing for a hurricane to hit South Dakota, which is pretty wild. Shaggy goes up top, but Eddie crotches him and gives him a superplex. Hot tag to Ray, who gets some offense. Raven finally getting physically involved. That allows Vampiro to hit nail in the coffin to Ray on the bouncy floor. Now Ray takes all the heat. Vampiro just hucks him with a powerbomb. Good lord. Shaggy with a running power slam, and he throws Ray out. Raven just gets in his face to talk shit and pretends to cry. Very odd behavior. Ray hits a moonsault on Shaggy, and it leads to a Kidman hot tag. Ray with the Bronco Buster to Violent J. Vampiro kicks his own man by mistake. Kidman with the shooting star and a hard landing on Shaggy's head. The not quite yet Filthy Animals win. I give it 3 stars out of 5. Had to give it a little extra love because I'm down with the clown, but this was just a solid 6-man match. Everyone got a chance to look pretty good in there. I was surprised how much offense that ICP got to get in this one because, they are certainly trained wrestlers, before WWF and WCW. They had the experience, but yeah, they got a lot of heat on the Filthy Animals for a while there, and so it was just, cool to see them throw down and just being involved at that level, back then as it is now. Really cool to see, and yeah, I get to review a match with them, so things come full circle. Up next for the WCW Tag Team titles, Canyon and Bam Bam Bigelow of the Jersey Triad take on a reuniting Harlem Heat. That's right after a series of attacks and rescues over the last couple of weeks, and after over a year of being disbanded, Booker T and Stevie Ray, finally, they are tag team partners once more than just brothers. They are Harlem Heat once again. Stevie Ray has renounced his NWO ways. He and Booker T have finally patched things up. So now one of the most dominant teams of the decade are back together, and it was really cool to see. I was really excited to see Harlem Heat get back together because the time I started watching wrestling, they had like just broken up or were just about to break up, and I could see how shocking it was at that time for when they did disband. There was a lot of disappointment, and so for them to get back together and for the fans to be so hyped for it, it's just really cool to see. And by the way, this definitely feels like a feel-good show in terms of like bringing back some of the older acts, some of the older things that from WCW not too long ago. Like, hey, remember like this good stuff? Kanyon has the mic and opens things off with a great diss by saying, by the looks of the audience, most of you can't afford cable TV. And then the rest of the crowd just drowns him out with their bikes, and he's so mad he can't even do his who better. Also, how are Booker and Stevie not going to have matching gear for their reunion match? Kind of a missed opportunity there. Stevie shows off the power, slamming not just Kanyon, but the Big Bammer as well. Tony totally no-selling a Heenan gag on commentary.
I remember one time I picked up the beast from the East. Her name was Monica. Never mind.
We get this moment in the middle of the match where Bam Bam and Stevie have a stare down, and the bikes just start to rev and rev and rev some more, and you could see on Stevie's face he's getting really into it, like, yeah, let's go. Like, it didn't really lead to anything, but that moment in isolation was just, yeah, pretty darn cool. Kanyon using the referee's back being turned to his advantage on Stevie. Stevie taking a kitchen sink and damn near lands on his head. Booker comes in, he wants to hit the axe kick, but Bigelow brings down the ropes, and the T in Booker T is for tumble. Booker kicks out of this super leg drop from Kanyon, and then Heenan goes, I thought he was spam. Like, what? Stevie gets the pivotal tag, he and Bam Bam trade shots. Suddenly, Diamond Dallas Page, the third man, runs in, only to immediately get thwarted. Missile dropkick to Bigelow, the cover and the win. Harlem Heat become 8-time WCW Tag Team Champions. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I think the moment of, the Harlem Heat reunion and them winning the belts was really cool, but the match did feel like just a basic tag team match. And I also think that the story they were telling just felt a bit too samey in terms of ebbs and flows to the trios match we had just seen. Also, I thought that DDP getting involved at the end for like a split second, just to make everyone in the Triad look dumb at once, I thought was a bit silly for them. Hey, another tag team match. It's Curt Hennig, Barry Windham, and Bobby Duncombe Jr. of the West Texas Rednecks taking on Shane Douglas, Dean Malenko, and Perry the Shooter Saturn of the Revolution. Shane Douglas has returned to WCW after his most recent ECW stay and has joined the Anti-Flair contingent in their quest to put out all the cancers in professional wrestling. And of course, Shane being one of the most outspoken critics of Flair for the last 5, 6, 7 years at that point, it only made sense that he would come in and, be part of this group that would eventually become the Revolution. It wasn't at this point, but it was all but ready. And also, it was pretty smart for Shane to be their mouthpiece because, between Saturn, Malenko, and Benoit, none of those guys were really known for talking. But one of the big stories here that will not be followed up on is that last week, Curt Hennig got into it with country star Chad Brock. Ooh, big story, not. The Rednecks come out to I Hate Rap, and it's so funny they can't make up their minds what song they're coming out to. Because at this point, like I mentioned at Bash the Beach, they have run I Hate Rap into the ground, and to the point where, okay, the humor of it is a bit gone, still kind of a catchy jingle, but then they want to do a follow-up song, and it's just so devoid of the same kind of level of irony. They try to make it more authentic. It's The Good Old Boys is the name of the song, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't hit the same at all. And so they come out to it 1 week on Nitro, and then they come out to I Hate Rap on Thunder, and then they come back to it later after this show too. It's really all over the place. It's so funny to me they're going on about Revolution, how they're representing the youth movement in WCW. Yes, all these guys in their mid-30s. Saturn grabs the mic and says, I don't want anyone to get confused thinking we're WCW's mystery men. Fact is, we don't care about the Cowboys or Chad Brock. We're here to set a couple things straight, and if we gotta start with you, fine. Huh? I thought it was pretty cool for Heenan to point out on commentary that he actually managed the fathers of all 4 of the men in the West Texas Rednecks. What a cool little trivia stat. Bobby Duncombe Jr. and Shane Douglas worked for a little bit. Then we get Perry the Shooter Saturn suplexing Barry Windham a bunch. By the way, that is the new nickname. They're really trying to get over with Perry at this point. Perry the Shooter Saturn. One of my favorite parts in the match is when Heenan breaks himself, calling Malenko Molino.
And the team of Malenko and Saturn and Douglas Molino. That's Italian team.
On the outside, Shano crotches Hennig on the steel ring post, but back in the ring he gets cut off and Windham works him over. Shane evades some offense and tags in Perry the Shooter Saturn. We have all 6 guys in the ring at one point. Dino Molino with the clover leaf, but Kendall Windham gets in the ring and dinks him with the cowbell. Perry the Shooter Saturn with a Death Valley driver to Windham for the win. Still scrapping a little after the bell, but what's done is done. Get a look at Perry the 6 Shooter Saturn. I give this one 3 stars out of 5. It is another tag team match in a series of tag team matches we've had at this point, even though everyone in the match here is objectively great and they're doing fine, but it's time for a little bit of variety in the card, yes? Well, how's this for some variety? Ernest the Cat Miller taking on Buff the Stuff Bagwell. Of course, the Cat at this point is very deep into his wannabe James Brown routine with Sonny Ono as his manager, claims to be the world's greatest dancer. Well, shortly after Bash at the Beach, that failed to sit well with the Stuff, Mr. Bagwell, who showed up and really had something to say about Ernest and his dancing. And they started beefing after that. And we would see Buff show up in blackface, sweating his ass off as he impersonated the Cat one week on Nitro. We also saw him swap Miller's loaded dance shoes with bunny slippers one week. Why Bagwell went from feuding with Ric Flair and Roddy Piper, the 2 top authority figures in the company, to doing a comedy angle with Ernest Miller in the span of 1 month, I'll never understand. And even though I watched a version of the show with the correct theme, we gotta show some love to the terrible network dub. And oh my goodness, the looks of Miller and Sonny Ono, especially the manager. He's wearing a helmet with biker goggles, he has the vest with no shirt and the chaps. This is amazing. Ernest Miller wearing the Confederate flag on his gloves. Ernest wants to talk but is drowned out by the motorcycles. And speaking of loud noises, check out this exclamation from the brain.
Yeah, that is the key, when you're able to return under these conditions.
So then Buff wants to talk, the Cat steals the mic from him and wants to talk again, the bikes just rev up again. They do a lot of shtick based on that, which is actually pretty funny. Buff tells Ernest to kiss everyone's ass. Miller starts off with some taunting and some motorcycle miming. It gets a pussycat chant, which is hilarious. Buff throws the taunts back, we get more shtick. Buff finally starts mounting an offense, he does some corner punches, but Cat cuts him off and hits his martial arts kick. Buff fights out of a long chin lock with a desperation suplex. Both men are down. There's more back and forth. Ono's up on the apron with the briefcase that contains the Cat's shoes. Buff reverses the whip and Cat just collides right into his manager. Buff with the roll-up and the win. Miller jumps him after the bell, takes him down. Ono does the Buff dance and poses on top of Buff, which is the funniest thing ever. I give it 1 star out of 5. It's a very basic, forgettable match. I mean, some of the stalling they do beforehand is funny. Sonny Ono is hilarious in this, but it's crazy when you hear the story that this match happened like literally moments after these two had come to blows backstage. Buff Bagwell and Ernest Miller got into a fight over the creative for this matchup. And it's funny to me that this is what they ultimately settled on. You know, Ernest does get his heat back, but then you have the manager looking big time goofy against, you know, the fallen babyface, which I thought was great. But it was, yeah, it's crazy though. You know, hey, they're professionals. They had a fight and they went out and they just did business after the fact, and and people were none the wiser for it. Essentially, they didn't work like they were like hating each other and mad, so you got to give them credit for that. Also, while I'm here, I just wanted to send well wishes to Buff Bagwell. At the time I'm filming this video, he just had his leg amputated, which is horrible news. Hopefully he can make a full recovery and go on to live full successful life after that. So my heart goes out to him at this time. Up next for the United States Championship, the new champion Chris Benoit defends against Diamond and Dallas Page. Benoit, along with Malenko and Saturn, they've been fighting the war against, the Ric Flair regime, which included the Jersey Triad. We saw a bit of a rivalry with Benoit and DDP over the last couple of months on TV. They're 1-1, and up until recently, the U.S. champion was David Flair, the inept son of Ric Flair. And so for weeks and weeks, he was protected by Ric Flair and the rest of his staff. So the referee, Charles Robinson, and Arn Anderson would all go out of their way to, help David win his matches. And of course, the Jersey Triad was a part of that group as well. In the most recent TV, just before the pay-per-view, David Flair dropped the U.S. belt to Chris Benoit, and it was actually kind of a last-minute decision. Apparently, Flair was having a bad attitude IRL backstage. His passion for wrestling had kind of been killed, which I don't blame him considering the position he was put in, from the get-go. So had kind of a bad attitude. They wanted to get the belt off him kind of really quick. And so Benoit wins it, and they pivot that to continue the Benoit-DDP feud, and this is kind of the rubber match. DDP doing his shtick where he says that love him or hate him, you'll never forget him. He makes a reference to Benoit's mother, saying that he knows Chris loves his mother, but so can anyone for $2.99 a minute. Oh, Diamond Dice Page over here. Benoit's off to a hot start in this no DQ match after DDP gets in his face. By the way, it's worth pointing out that Benoit has asked the members of the Revolution to stay in the back during this, which is why when you see some things like play out the way they do in this match, those guys just sit in the back and do nothing. Page knocked off the platform after some funny wobbling around, but catches Benoit in midair and drops him with the reverse atomic drop. Page, picking Benoit up in this fireman's carry, just picks him up and dumps him face first into the mat. We get this quick exchange. It sees DDP laying Benoit out with a clothesline. Then it's a big old spine buster later on. They fight their way to the corner. Benoit and the Trio of Woe. Then DDP just pops Charles Robinson in the face, then takes his belt off him. He whips Benoit with it. Then he chokes Benoit with it. Oh, God. Look, I know I said at the top of this video, I don't like to put hindsight into stuff like this, but Jesus, how can you look at that and not make that observation? Suddenly, Chris Canyon runs in. The rest of the Revolution watching on the split screen, cheering him on. Benoit somehow fights off all three guys on his own, hits the diving headbutt, and wins to retain. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I really enjoy the chemistry that Benoit and DDP have at this time. I think they work really well, and it's probably the strongest match just strictly, in terms of cohesion in the entire night. I think the whole optics with the belt and hindsight notwithstanding, I think that they made a good use of the no DQ stipulation. And, even though they established why the Revolution doesn't come out to help Benoit, seeing them in the split screen watching, to me was funny as hell. But man, it really you're really building up Benoit as something huge here if he's able to fight off all three guys just like that, boom, 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 to keep his title. They give away a motorcycle, and then we go on to Sid Vicious taking on Sting. I guess you could say it's some fallout from Bash at the Beach the previous month, since they were on opposite sides of the main event match. Sid currently calling himself the Millennium Man as he's trying to, catch up to and eventually break Goldberg's original win streak. And man, I love the way they are actually portraying Sid here. I don't know why he's in this alliance with Rick Steiner and Kevin Nash. I don't quite get that, but I always find him better as a kind of a lone wolf character. But I think that some of the ways he's beating people up and the lights change on him as he cuts this promo, the live crowd can't hear. He's just talking menacingly into the camera. What a cool presentation that is. Also, Sting won the presidency of WCW or something. They do mention that, but it's I feel it should be a bigger deal that he was the one to dethrone evil Ric Flair after all that time and all the bullshit that Flair and Piper put people through for months. I don't know, fighting a match with Sid Vicious, I just don't see the path. That doesn't make sense to me. Also, this match feels like a tale as old as time. Who remembers the main event of Halloween Havoc 91? I saw a sign at this point that reads, "The final road wild of the century." Dude, you're not going to know this, but it's the final one ever. Sting's off to a strong start. We get some big splashes, clothesline to the outside. Sid even goes teetering over the barricade into some fans. Let's do it again on the other side. Sid fights back. He hits some slams, works Sting down into a chinlock, continues to beat the Stinger pillar to post for a while. Sid goes up top, but Sting catches him and beels him off, goes to run, but Sid trips him up. I don't think I've ever seen that done before that way. Sting fires up again, but once again it's snuffed out. He fights his way to a superplex, goes for a trio of Stinger splashes, but on the third one he is goozled in midair, the choke slam, the cover, the win. Wow. I give it 2 stars out of 5. I don't think the match was that great. I think I'd seen better from both of these guys, but that ending was so shocking and emphatic, just the way that Sid absorbed all that offense and just like flattens him at the end. What a way to get him over as this monster, as this credible killer threat to guys like Goldberg and like to Hulk Hogan, for instance. Speaking of Goldberg, Da Man is back after being away for a little bit filming the Universal Soldier sequel, and his first big feud back is against World TV Champion Rick Steiner. Not that him being champion matters or anything, because the belt is definitely not on the line in this match. But Goldberg's return was pretty cool. He came back just before Bash at the Beach during the Megadeth concert. He's going, "I'm back!" And he used their song Crush 'Em as his theme for a while here, which is a great song. It's a great wrestling theme. It's a great song for Bill Goldberg. The only problem was his original theme was already there and it was way better. And by updating this and getting the kind of modern, like, other major band tie-in, you're depriving fans of chanting Goldberg during his entrance, which is one of the best parts of the entrance. Both guys going for big bombs right out the gate. What the hell is this collision as they come off the ropes? Rick powders and hangs out for a while before coming back in. He uses the referee as a diversion before taking Goldberg to Dick Kick City. He rips Goldberg's knee brace off and just starts bludgeoning him with it as a weapon. Referee just letting this all go. Again and again, Steiner using the knee brace as like a piece of armor, beating the hell out of Goldberg with it. He dinks him with it, hits a DDT, still not enough, but sure enough, Goldberg fires right back up, hits the big press slam, the spear, the jackhammer, and the win. And I'm going to give it a 1/2 star out of 5. What a hellacious display. You know what? I'll say this, we can mock Goldberg in his later years all we want, but his retirement match with Gunther was a lot better than this. Up next, we get the in-ring return of the Worm, Dennis Rodman, as he takes on the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Well, Randy had gone from winning his 4th and final World Championship the month prior at Bash the Beach to losing it to Hollywood Hogan the next night on Nitro, to feuding with Dennis Rodman, who at this point, though he's still a well-known mainstream athlete, still playing in the NBA, his luster is worn off a little bit, and the allure of Rodman wrestling again isn't as exciting as it was in 97 and 98 when he was rolling with the NWO. So Randy Savage here, no longer the champion, loses to Hogan and gets his sloppy seconds. I got a feel for him. But he's going off the rails even more than usual after losing the belt. He's fired Medusa and Miss Madness 99 from the team and has suddenly claimed that he's running for president now. That really never goes anywhere. Meanwhile, Robert Wuhl, who plays Arliss on the HBO series Arliss, does some commentary as Arliss one night for a tie-in for a WCW-themed episode airing soon. And he's doing commentary saying Dennis Rodman is going to be here tonight because Arliss was like a sports agent. So I guess that's the tie-in. He's heralding the return of Dennis Rodman to television. And so sure enough, later that night, there is a scene where Rodman just shows up and gets in Randy Savage's face, and they has fight. And that is justification for this matchup. The next week, Rodman just kidnaps Gorgeous George, Savage's valet, because that apparently was the thing to do if you're feuding with Randy Savage in 99, was just you kidnap Gorgeous George. Kevin Nash did it, and Dennis Rodman's doing it. And then he's like, oh yeah, man, I had sex with your lady. She's my bitch now. And the fans were like, I don't know, man, that's kind of rude. Like, Rodman's the baby face. He's meant to be the face in all this, but Rodman is just so unlikable as a character in this storyline that, they don't cheer for Savage either, so it just kind of ends up muting it out. Also, Savage has promised a surprise for Rodman in their match, and he says it will be the person who drove the white Hummer. So, are we going to get a resolution to that finally? After both men have made their entrance, Rodman gets on the mic and he wants to know where his bitch Gorgeous George is at. And Savage says, "Tonight, you're my bitch, oh yeah!" Which does feel like the fair and appropriate way to respond. Rodman strikes first and actually beats the hell out of Savage for a long time in this match. A surprisingly long amount. Like, I've seriously seen Randy Savage sell less for Hulk Hogan, and he is putting over Rodman like this world beater. Rodman only gets a 2 count and immediately gets in referee Billy Silverman's face, throws him around, then he clotheslines him. Oh, that was rough. This has to be the fastest I've ever seen a referee get replaced in a match, by the way. Savage finally fights back by going after the eyes, drops the worm across the top rope, then suddenly leaves the ring and just decks Russ Foreman at ringside. He's the new editor for WCW magazine, taking pictures. Poor Russ Foreman. Savage hits Rodman with Foreman's camera, which seems like an odd weapon for a wrestling match, but it's effective. Savage knocks Mickey J out of the match. Scott Dickinson goes down. What is this, a Jeff Jarrett match? Rodman backdrops Savage out of the ring. The fight continues to spill to the outside, up the ramp, and behind the set. And some of you have probably seen this next clip. Savage shoves Rodman into this porta potty, then tips it over, and then as Rodman exits, you see all that stuff just seeping out. And look, I know that this was apparently a planned spot and everything, but I just really hope that that was not shoot shit in that porta potty. Savage blasts Rodman on their way down the ramp. Back in the ring, Rodman goes off the second rope for a dive, lays out another referee by mistake. Suddenly out comes Gorgeous George, who has been missing from TV for weeks. George hands Savage a chain, then she hits Rodman in the balls, Savage with the loaded punch, and wins the match. So does that mean that Gorgeous George drove the Hummer? Don't think too hard about that one. I'm going to give this 1.5 stars out of 5. I'm going to give Rodman credit for how he performed in this matchup. There's a lot of ways that he was kind of protected in this, through the consummate professional in Randy Savage, and also working with a lot of referees and having a lot of gaga around, just fighting on the outside. So I think that that protected him, and I think that made this match a lot better than it had any right to be. And I feel bad for Savage. And I don't, from what I heard, he was a professional and he got on well with Rodman and that sort of thing. So I'm glad that he did business and everything, but I just feel for him here. I feel that he's better than getting less popular Dennis Rodman, in a feud. In your main event, it's career versus career for the WCW Championship as Hulk Hogan defends against his former NWO cohort in Kevin Nash. Like I mentioned, a month earlier at Bash at the Beach, Nash lost the world title to Randy Savage. It's important to remember here that Nash was a babyface at that point. So, jump ahead to the next night on Nitro. Hulk Hogan is back for the first time since Spring Stampede, and he challenges Randy Savage to a world title match. And in the main event, in kind of a callback to what happened the previous year, Kevin Nash once again attacking Randy Savage and costing him the title. And so, okay, that makes sense. Babyface helps another babyface win the belt from a heel. Fine, but then immediately after Hogan wins the championship, Kevin Nash is like, "Oh man, the political shark is back and you owe me a title match. This is bullshit." Well, then why didn't you help him win the belt, asshole? If you're mad at him winning it for political reasons and you still cost him the what? Oh, and by the way, now Nash is a heel for this, by the way. So on the flimsiest of pretenses, Nash went from being the cool babyface who was thwarting Team Madness and dumping, human waste onto them and everything, and can I trust Sting and this and that, from being Mr. Joe Cool babyface to suddenly now he's just a heel because he's not Hogan and he wants a title match. And he's the head writer of this product at the time, and I don't know why he wrote himself to have such a crappy heel turn. But then on the Go Home Nitro, Hulk is backstage with his son Nick, and Nick is like, "Dad, why don't you wear the red and yellow gear that I packed you?" And Hulk looks conflicted, and then he does this run in this beatdown angle with a few other guys in the night, and then for the main event, for the 6-man tag, he comes back as the red and yellow. He's not wearing the same red and yellow gear that Nick pulled out. I thought that was a fun little continuity error, but it was the return of the red and yellow Hulkamania version of Hogan, which got a real big reception. This was my first real glimpse at seeing like red and yellow Hogan in real time. I'd seen some of that old, older Hulk Hogan stuff by that point, red and yellow WWF, a little bit of his pre-NWO stuff in WCW, but that was all after the fact. So this is my first time witnessing a red and yellow Hogan, and seeing that reaction and it being really positive. So I think it was really cool that they did bring that back. I think WCW at the time was kind of low on baby faces, low on hope and things to kind of like cling to at that time with how wild the booking was. And so, like I alluded to earlier in the review, with Harlem Heat coming back, and hey, Hulk Hogan's red and yellow again. So hey, maybe things are, kind of like going back to this, this period of the before time when things were a little more interesting and fun. And so maybe that explains partly why the buy rate for this show went up so high. That 6-man tag match on Nitro, the babyfaces won, so Nash is forced to put his career on the line, as well as Hogan's. And there's got to be no other company besides WCW who abused the loser must retire stipulation anymore over the years. I feel like Hogan and Flair in particular really got, and Sting, got a lot of those like you gotta retire stipulations over and over again, especially in the end. I did not like the build going into it as I watched it in '99, and looking back again for research for this show, I didn't like it any better. I think, like I said, the double turn justification was so weak. I think that like the hype packages they ran for it, trying to tie everything together and just try to make sense of the up and down relationship that Hogan and Nash have had in WCW was pretty funny, trying to explain the finger poke of doom and how things went from that to this point we are at now. They showed that like 2 of the last 3 weeks of build. So like they ran that video package, 2 weeks ran by, and then they ran it again on television, and like nothing had changed about it. So they just tell you the same story. All right, we have 2 master politicians, the 2 guys with the most political power in the company at the moment, with Nick Patrick as the referee. I am ready to see some bullshit. The match begins, they trade lock-up shoves, Nash with the headlock for a long time, Hogan with the suplex, Nash powders. We get this test of strength where Nash takes over and beats Hogan up in all the corners. We get the elbows, the boot. Hulkster's hair looks amazing here, by the way. Nash takes too much time grandstanding and a hot dogging, and that allows the real American to make a big comeback, but only for a moment. Nash is back on top, back to those corners. And when you run out of corner spots to do, you go to the outside and you brawl for a bit. Back in the ring, Nash continues to dominate. He does a pose. By the way, sidebar, can I just say for the record that in WCW NWO Revenge, I loved playing as Kevin Nash. I loved the jackknife, I loved all his power moves, but that taunt, holy crap, the slow arm raise and everything. And you had to do the whole taunt in order to get the spirit meter to go up, and that taunt was like 30 seconds long. I hated that shit. I'm sorry, I just felt like now was the only appropriate time to bring that up. Anyway, Nash connects with a boot, hits a beautiful jackknife powerbomb, but of course, it's time for Hulk to him up. The boot, the leg drop, the surprisingly clean as a sheet pinfall for the win. Hulkamania rules once again. Nash is retired for all of 2 months, and Hogan stands tall with the title as we go off the air. Man, when you consider the stakes involved in this matchup and the mutual history between Nash and Hogan and the place that this match had on the card, I would have wanted something a little more than this really basic, boring match. I give it a half star out of 5. The live crowd probably didn't care either way because they've been blitzed since like 10 a.m., but this was a really abysmal match. I mean, I know the report was at the time that Hogan's knee was not in the best shape, but man, they spent more time in the corners of the ring than they did in the middle doing anything. And I was just really gobsmacked in a way, it's kind of refreshing that the match ended as clean as it did, but also I'm like, wow, for considering everything and all working against this match here, you would think they would try and throw some shit in there, like some run-ins, some weapons or anything. Nope, none of that. And Nash is gone. He's going to be back in October, so it kind of means nothing. I knew Hogan was going to win. It didn't feel like it was in doubt. I was just kind of shocked that they didn't do anything to like spice it up and make it a little more interesting. But yeah, that was it. Just kind of a boring match. That said, my grade for Road Wild 1999 is a C-. It's not the worst show I've ever seen. It's gonna get worse for WCW pretty soon, but as of right now, this show just felt really just mediocre. Just really, there wasn't a lot of great stuff to help elevate it either. Not even the mid-card could save this one. I think that it was just, it just shows that WCW is in a really rough place now. There's a lot of creative forces that are at play and in flux, and Eric Bischoff is very imminently out the door in WCW, and things are just going to get more chaotic from there. But this is just a very wild time in the company where they are trying to look back in certain ways with some of their acts, but also trying to look into the future and trying to lean in more to, I guess, that entertainment side of things. And it's just very odd place for WCW, and it's only going to get worse. But what did you think of Road Wild? What were some of your favorite matches and moments? And how about this review? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and hit that bell icon for all the notifications. Well, next time here on the Classic Review, we are going back to the land of TNA, to the year 2006, for a little bit of hard justice. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.